Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to discuss some trailers that dropped at Comic-Con, specifically DC trailers, specifically DCTV. Obviously, if you haven't seen these, I'll include a link to them in the description down below. First up, we'll talk about the Arrowverse trailers. Obviously, starting off with Arrow. Obviously, Arrow is going into its final season, and the trailer that dropped was a sizzle reel of just basically the entire series as a whole, which even I commented on. The fact is, it's crazy to look and see how much has gone on over the course of this series, that, you know, where we started in season 1 getting to where we currently are at season 7. It's crazy, and you know, I'm so excited to see how this story ends because of everything that we've been through, you know, on this roller coaster along with these characters. So obviously we get a little bit of peeks at the 8th and final season. Obviously a lot of this is dealing with the, you know, the Monitor telling Oliver at the end of season 7, you are going to die. It's kind of written in stone, so we're going to need you for this coming crisis. And that's something I find very interesting, because if you look at where everything else around the Arrowverse is, like, everything's coming around like October. Arrow isn't, from what I've seen so far, which I know this final season is only 10 episodes, so I guess its ending is going to coincide with like the endings of each of the new respective seasons, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't sure how they were going to go about it. I'm still not 100% sure what to really expect from it. My thought that I had was kind of, just based on a little bit I read, made me think like, okay, we might get Oliver traveling across the multiverse, and stuff in this trailer makes me think maybe we will, because there's like, we see Adrian Chase, we see Laurel, but she's dressed a little differently. She got a new outfit, her hair's shorter, so it's like, then we see some of the stuff with like Mia and the gang in the future, so it makes me think, okay, so maybe we are going to bounce back and forth between like what Oliver's doing across the multiverse potentially, as well as what they're up to in the future. Because it might be, if you're familiar with Lost, this comparison might not, if you're not familiar with Lost, this comparison might not mean much to you, but like the final season of Lost, obviously Lost has a similar thing to Arrow, where it's like, oh, flashbacks, flashing back in certain parts and then focusing on the present day with a lot of its stories. Well, it did an interesting thing with its flashbacks in the final season, so I'm curious, is Arrow going to do that same thing, where basically everything kind of meets in the middle? Like, what happens, the story continues present day, but then we see things kind of happening in potential flashback. Like I said, the things in Lost final season are kind of done a little different, so I'm curious, is that kind of where Arrow's heading? Are we going to have like, oh, like Oliver and him doing his thing, and then eventually him and his, you know, daughter and son, you know, William, also like meeting each other in the middle, and that'll be kind of potentially the conclusion of all of this. I think it is kind of set in stone that Oliver will die. I mean, maybe there'll be a loophole to it, but I don't think it. I think, in all honesty, if he does go out in the finale, it would be well earned. I think it'd be good to see him have his big hero moment. That's always what he's been striving to be, a better version of himself. I think that was even something I was reading, like he'll find out what it really means to be a hero this season or whatever. So it's definitely gonna be interesting to see, you know, maybe I'm completely wrong about the whole traveling across the multiverse thing, but just what a little bit we see in the trailer seemed very interesting. So I'm super excited to see just everything that goes down. Next up, we have Supergirl. A lot of interesting things. Obviously, we're picking up, you know, there's the whole Leviathan thing, which is like, what's that about? I'm wondering, is that, because it seems like this season might be like tech heavy, just because of Lena as well as other stuff, but I think that's what we're going to see, the more techie side of things kind of come out to kind of, you know, it's like battle against like, I mean, obviously Lena's got her own issues with Kara, obviously. So the question then becomes like, okay, so she's saying like this isn't personal. She just wants Kara to feel the hurt that she feels. It's just like, Kara's felt plenty of hurt in her life, but it's just like you got your own vendetta because she lied to you so much. It's even something I also talked about, is the fact is, it almost seems like, I mean, it seems like this was always destined to happen. I've been waiting for it to happen, because you knew at some point Lena and her were going to clash, just because the L's and the Luthers, it just never works out no matter what, you know? It always seems like they're cursed, they're destined to be enemies no matter what. You thought maybe Kara and Lena could break that mold, but maybe not. This might even be us being like, okay, Lena starts off with a little hurt, but then eventually we might see her swoop into full-blown villain this season. That might be something that might be, you know, Lex's final little trump card. Because it seems at one point Lena ends up punching Kara and it kind of knocks her back, which is like, Lena should be able to do that, so obviously she's probably not like superhuman, but she's probably using tech, kind of leaning more towards like Lex did when he kind of went cross paths with, you know, Superman and whatnot, you know, so that might be something we see. The question then becomes also like, what part will this all play in the Crisis as well, because we saw the Monitor show up potentially to grab Lex's body. Obviously there's that whole thing at the end with the Martian that's coming after John, who calls him brother. Once again, is that his actual brother, or is that just meant to be like, oh, a fellow Martian? Whatever the case may be. We got at least 2 new faces in the trailer, so what part they play in it, I'm very interested to see. Also, we get a new look at Kara's new suit. But it's interesting too, because I might have talked about this before, I don't remember, but the fact is, Kara's the only one in the like Arrowverse who hasn't really gotten a suit upgrade consistently like that. I mean, because Barry and Oliver have changed outfits a few times over the course of their series, but like this is her first ever. Like obviously she got like the suit last season, but she didn't wear it that often, so it wasn't like a new addition, and she still kept, you know, the traditional suit she's had since the beginning of the series. So it's gonna, I don't know, like I said, it just looks neat. You know, it's not the biggest change, but it's a nice looking change. So I'm very interested to see, you know, everything this season has in store for us, especially with everything that kind of got left off last season, where a lot of storylines take us, you know. Next up will be The Flash, a very interesting trailer. Interesting in the sense that, like, it wasn't as much of a sizzle reel as the others. The others had new stuff, a little new stuff. This was kind of like all new stuff to a certain extent. Some old stuff mixed in, but it was mainly new stuff. Essentially, we're doing this dude named Ramsey, who's basically, I get, you know, a doctor. I've always tried to, you know, stop the things that hurt people. And for him, that includes like wiping out cancers and things like cancers come in different forms, even referring to Team Flash as a cancer, because I guess it's a thing of like they do more harm than good. Like anything that goes down is because of them. So obviously this must be dealing with the ramifications of everything that went down last season. You know, Eobard being set free, kind of doing his thing, as well as obviously, like, you know, Nora's death as well. It seems like basically the way it's kind of implying, it almost seems like I saw a picture of something, like it's one of those things, because I'm not well versed in comic books, so I'm sure anyone watching the trailers are probably like, oh my god, they're totally doing this. It's like, it kind of is lost on me, but I think I saw something that makes me, like, that seems like this season's going to be like a speedster thing, that, you know, there's that whole thing that Zoom is, that, well, Zoom is now, like the whole, like, kind of a time rave type of situation. I'm wondering, is that what Ramsey's become? Is he kind of become like this speedster of death? Because for him, it's like, oh, like no one has to die anymore. I wonder, is he going to like try and kill Team Flash because it's like, oh, the fact of the matter is you do, like I said, more harm than good. And that, once again, they're a cancer that needs to be wiped out to preserve life. You know, removing certain things, like, because maybe he sees like death, and to try and stop death, he kills people or things to stop it. Or, you know, maybe this has, like I said, more in line with like a timeline thing, because the timeline is out of whack because of just everything related to Barry, and just kind of everyone in his circle, just, you know, time's out of whack, and time's trying to get him back in line, maybe potentially by removing him. Maybe this has something to do with the fact is that Barry is no longer alive, you know, in the timeline that Nora was, or at the very least he wasn't around in the timeline Nora was from. We never found out what happened to him. It's just like the timeline is constantly in flux, changing now. Mainly because of Eobard just in every step changing everything, but along with Barry playing his own role in that. Like I said, I'm curious, is it a situation that, does he get chosen to be this like potential Flash, I mean this speedster of death, or is it a situation that he gets possessed by it but he takes control of it? I'm so curious to kind of find out what that's all about. Obviously, like, new dynamics, you know, with the team and everything, like everyone figuring themselves out. Let's not forget Cisco's no longer VIDS, but he's still kicking it with Team Flash. Him and Camilla being a couple and everything, and her kind of be a part of this world and everything. So I'm very interested to see where things end up taking us. So that's all the Arrowverse stuff. Next up, let's talk about one trailer that came out for the DC Universe, and that is the Harley Quinn cartoon, which it's super cool. I wasn't like, because I knew it was an animated series, but I didn't know what it was really going to be like. And it looks wild and crazy. Like, if I had to compare it to anything, it looks kind of like kind of reminds me of Venture Brothers kind of thing. I'm curious, is it going to be like an overarching story, or is it just going to be kind of like a Venture Brother where there is an overarching story, like the story kind of continues, the characters' developments continue and stuff like that, and it just seems like there's random episodes. Is it going to have that aesthetic? But obviously it seems wild and crazy. Like it's not like some like keeping up the tone with the live action stuff, whether it be Titans and Doom Patrol. It most likely is mature, obviously, with a lot of stuff that goes down in it. So it's interesting to kind of get like DC stuff from like Harley Quinn's perspective. It seems like the only hero she comes across, at least from, because she came across many different, there was like Aquaman, so it's not just Batman, but she comes across heroes. But it's gonna be interesting to kind of see her kind of kicking it with villains and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat to see this in an adult cartoon format. It's also interesting too because there's a lot of well-known actors, you know, associated with this cartoon, like lending their voices. It's a crazy cast when you actually sit down and break it down. So I'm really, like I said, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I loved what I saw. So that is something to look forward to. Also, kind of on the DC front, there's also the Watchmen trailer that came out, which was interesting. I'll tell you up front, I don't remember Watchmen that well. I liked it, but it's just like, it's been years, and I think it just, you know, because I was a teenager when it came out, so it didn't really hit me. Like, I think if I sat back and watched it now, I'd probably absorb it a lot more. So I don't remember it as well, because obviously this TV show, which interestingly enough, the stuff had come out to basically say it's more closely a sequel to the comic books, which I didn't know there was like a difference there. I knew there, like, the movie was kind of a true to adaptation, but I guess there were, you know, changes here and there. In what cases, I'm not really sure. It's something I'd have to look into more. But either way, even without fully having the context of the movie, I'm assuming, like, obviously this has to deal with a lot of like Rorschach. Like, see, my ignorance is right there. But obviously a lot of people dressing like him is kind of, I guess he was kind of like, sort of like basically this narrative was being built in the world, and basically his final thing, and at least at the very end of the movie, I don't know if it applies in the comic books, he was kind of exposing kind of this conspiracy that was happening in the world that basically the heroes were kind of being complicit with, at least, you know, more so Dr. Manhattan kind of was. So it seems like it's combating that, but kind of being like chaotic and kind of like fuck the system type of situation, going up against, you know, well, the system, you know. So that seems like what they represent, but they're also going after cops. And so like Regina King's character, for example, cops have to start hiding their identities in this world, which is kind of an interesting take on things. And like, to do their job as cops, to also make sure that their families don't become targets and stuff. Like, I was like, wow, because that way you never know who's actually, you know, a cop or not. I mean, you know, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But it seems like Regina King's character kind of takes it further and goes full-blown vigilante in this world and stuff like that. So that's interesting. And there's even Jean Smart's character kind of walks up and she's like, oh, do you know what the difference is between, you know, a cop in a mask and a vigilante? And Regina King's character is like, no. And she's like, me neither. And it's like, it seems a very interesting world that they're setting up. You know what I'm saying? I can recognize it, even, you know, not necessarily having 100% the context of the comic book or even really remembering the movie that well. So like I said, it seems pretty interesting because no one could really make heads or tails of just the teaser. So let's how we kind of elaborate a little bit more on it. I'm curious to kind of, you know, see what this world is, what the world has become after, you know, events of Watchmen. Like I said, I'll probably end up rewatching Watchmen at the very least to have that context to understand like what's going on, you know. So maybe they'll kind of explain it like, oh, you know, maybe it's kind of like an alternate reality type of thing in comparison of like, yeah, there's a movie's continuity, but then there's a comic book's continuity, and maybe like kind of a path of where things could have gone because of the comic books continuity more so than, you know, something like that. So I'm very interested to see what it's all about. And then also in the vein of DC, but, you know, more so on the like Vertigo comic side of things, we have a trailer dropping for the 4th and final season of Preacher, which I'm very excited about. I liked a lot of what we saw in this, like a lot of fast cuts we saw in the teaser that were really interesting, but obviously it's Jesse and Tulip rescuing Cassidy. We see potentially God's plans. We kind of get that idea of what it is. Obviously it is kind of going alongside the Grail's plan. I guess in my head I always assumed what the Grail was up to was just kind of their own thing, like the whole like, oh, they're trying to prepare, they want a messiah for the apocalypse that is to come. So I'm assuming I assumed that, I thought they would, it never clicked in my head to think like, oh yeah, God's plan and their plan would kind of coincide, of course, because they're tight with heaven. I mean, they've also got connections to hell, hence why it's interesting, because you see the Grail, in particular, Herr Starr, meeting with both God and Hitler, so you think there'd be some kind of like, wait, what? But I guess it's kind of like a thing where heaven and hell need to kind of come together for this plan to go through. It's kind of God's perfect plan, or just got this apocalypse thing going on. It's just like more fast cuts and just a craziness. You know, like, can't forget about the cowboy, you know, the Saint Killers. There's Eugene. There's just so much to kind of figure out, like, where this is all going. Like, obviously it's all heading to the apocalypse. I caught a glimpse of something. I didn't watch the video, but I think it was someone on IGN that was basically discussing, like, apparently, like, how different the apocalypse in the TV show is going to be compared to the apocalypse in the comic book or graphic novel. So that was a kind of an interesting detail. It's probably something I'll look up after I complete the final season. So I'm curious, you know, what, you know, because like I talked about before in different videos, like how the fact is God is avoiding Jesse because of the whole Genesis situation, what might potentially come about that, but becomes of all of our heroes at the end of this story, at the end of this apocalypse. Will the apocalypse go off, and will it be the end? Who will rise up to be this Messiah? And we even see like Humberdew like in hell with Hitler. Like, what's up with him running hell now that Satan's dead? Like, how does he run hell and stuff like that? There's so many questions, and I'm so excited to see this show go out with a literal bang. It's gonna be crazy. To my knowledge, these trailers are the only thing that's come out that's DC related, but obviously I've seen that there's also news trickling out from Comic-Con as well. So obviously there's other things too, like Black Lightning had a Sizzle World, but there wasn't anything new. Kind of the same thing as like last year. There was no Legends trailer that dropped to my knowledge. I did see one kind of mixed up with the Arrowverse stuff. I don't know if any new stuff dropped for Batwoman necessarily, any new trailers Comic-Con related, but I mean, either way, I'm still looking for that. Looking forward to the new season of Black Lightning and Legends, but also, you know, the new series of Batwoman as well. So, but like I said, this is just me, you know, sharing my thoughts about everything. In the comments down below, amongst the trailers that dropped, had you seen all of them? What piqued your interest the most? Let me know in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.